up to you.
Welcome back to the Uninkable Dads podcast, the only Lorcana show where bad puns are mandatory and rules questions usually get answered with ask the judge. But today we've got a special guest, an actual Lorcana judge. So that's right, someone who knows the rules better than our Google searches. So we're going to be interviewing Imogen a bit later in the episode, getting the inside scoop on judging Lorcana and getting her thoughts on set 9 deck lists. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host, famous at our locals for confidently quoting rules that don't actually exist. If you've ever heard the phrase, trust me, I've read it on Discord, it's probably come from him. It's FPSMadness.
Yeah,
How are you?
I don't think I make it all up. I must have read it
Just the
somewhere.
interesting bits.
That's the thing. You know, I don't make it up. It's there somewhere. It's in that little brain of mine in there somewhere.
Well, it sounded good. Sounded like it should
as long as
work
it sounds
like that.
good. And what difference does it make?
Normally, with most of us, to be fair, at our locals, we just accept what you say. So,
I mean, I'd like to think that I'm right 90% of the time. I do get the occasion wrong, but I like to think I'm right 90% of the time. So, you know, and as long as we all follow the same thing, what difference does it make?
yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
your Pinocchio can quest for 12, but so can mine. So, you know.
Well, if you're right 90% of the time, we're probably about 100% between us then, because I reckon I'm probably about 10% when it comes to rules.
Yeah, this is true. There you go. Between us, we've got it covered. So
Absolutely.
don't worry, Imogen. You know. Obviously, we'll go through a few bits of it. It's just been nice to talk to someone who's obviously knows the game into that level of depth.
Yeah.
Obviously, as players, we all know the basics of the rules. We all know most of the rules, but it's more what to do when things go wrong. You know, they're there for a reason, and you know we're going to get to ask some questions and find out why. So, but before we jump into that, how's your week been?
It's been all right, actually. I joined the gym this week, so I haven't had a chance to tell you this, but we spoke about it before. I was going to join gym that my son used to go to. Like, he used to go like 5 days a week. He stopped going.
Yeah.
He's still paying every month, as many people do, not using it. So I was going to go along with him to kind of encourage him and lose some weight, get fit myself. And then decided I wouldn't do that. I'd put a home gym in instead. So we bought some equipment for our conservatory. And then my son's like, yeah, but I'm not using any of that because I don't want to do cardio, and I need like the really big weights. So we looked at putting him here in a full on weight, and I'm just like, I'm not quite sure my conservatory floor is going to take that, to be fair. So we backtracked and I went down and joined up at the gym. So yeah,
Nice.
Started that this week. So been to the gym twice, absolutely knackered. So I get a month off now, right? I think that's the way it works, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I need to go down and find out what's going on. I've had a membership for about 8 months, but nothing seems to be happening. I have to pop in and see what's happening. You know? I thought you just sign up, didn't you? Or do you actually have to go?
That's it. Just sign up and get fit by being a member, right?
I thought that's how it works. Yeah, I'm obviously doing something wrong.
But yes, that's been it. And then Lorcana wise, I've been watching a lot of videos. Looking at what people are cooking up for set 9. I'm getting really excited, right? I know there was a lot of concern that this was going to be a meta that was all going to be just aggro, and there was one standout deck, and I don't think that's the case at all. I've seen some really interesting decks that all do some very different things, and I think there's space in the meta for a number of these decks. Because they will all be able to beat each other in different ways. And I think it's a really interesting meta to be able to cook up different decks. And actually, the fact that we've got a load of reprints means we've got all these cards that we kind of know, but we maybe haven't been able to get the best out of.
Just forgotten about,
Yeah, or they haven't really seen play before just because there's been a bit too much removal, or just because it fails to that card. All of a sudden, it's like, which of these cards could come out and shine here?
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of testing this week, and it's been a bit weird because, you start to build a little bit of a wide board to be able to pull off combos now. Like you can start thinking, oh, I'm going to play this, and this. I'm not going to quest because I need it to pull off, this set combo or whatever. But before you were scared to do that because you go too wide, you're going to get punished for it. Whereas now there's not really a wide punish in this. There is, but it's more late game and it's very specific to set colors. And whereas I feel like beforehand you could build up a board and it get wiped in a turn, whereas now it's a lot harder. So I don't know. I just feel like you get a chance to actually pull off some synergies and actually do what the cards say. Some of them work perfectly on their own, but once you pair it with two or three other things, it starts to really come together. So I think we're going to see a lot of like heavy combo decks, which could be quite interesting. So I've got a purple steel one that I come up with, which I'll share with you guys. Obviously, we've got the green red one that we'll look over from the update from this week. How that's progressed since last week. But yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting one. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a very, very open and wide meta. Everyone's saying it's aggro, but I don't think it will be.
No, and I think, as you say, there are some board wipes. Under the Sea is one of the obvious ones, but they've all got these little limitations on them now. So Under the Sea has a limit in terms of not being able to reduce strength. Previously, you just play Kido down and everything gets strength removed, and you just remove everything. Well, they haven't got that now, so you can play around it a little bit. They've got to think a bit more about how they set it up. Previously, obviously, you'd see Sue with Sapphire Coil or whatever, so it didn't really matter what you put down. Your opponent could reduce the strength and get rid of everything. Those things are just not there now.
No, that's it.
Or they're more conditional. So
they're a lot harder to pull off.
Yeah, so I think it will be interesting. I think there'll be, as you say, there'll be people looking to set up these combos because you've got the opportunity to actually do that now, and therefore we're going to be looking to build decks to say, well, how do I stop that from happening? So I think it's I think it's going to be an interesting.
I think we've got there's a couple of events on the first weekend, so we should get some interesting news straight away from that. So it'd be good to see.
And what else have you been up to this week?
To be honest, not that much, to be fair. Obviously, Friday I went to locals. I took a set 9 decks. I took a red-blue deck on Friday, but not the standard DKP that we all know and love. Completely different. Obviously, everyone else was still playing set 8, but it did okay. I won 2 games 2-0, and then I lost to yourself.
Yeah, that was a little bit. I felt a bit bad actually. To be fair,
I'm playing set 9. You're playing set 8.
And I turned up. I got the round 1 bye, which you don't normally want on Friday, but that did mean I could look at everyone's deck, and I kind of had a sneaky idea that I was probably going to be playing your Panos in the next round. Both playing red blue, as you say, very different decks, but both red blue control. So I quickly sleeved up an alternative deck than the one I was going to play, which was very much targeted at beating red blue. So it was a bit cheeky.
Yeah, I mean, round 1 bye and no deck list. It's perfect time, but yeah, no, I did that. That went okay. It's just it's too slow. It's not quite the deck it used to. Well, it's nowhere near the deck it used to be. But yeah, so I've abandoned that. I've got something else, a little bit of spice for this week. We'll see how that goes down. But yeah, it's been okay. Just online, doing a bit of testing, doing a bit of theory crafting. I've probably made about 20 different decks, looked at them and gone, yeah, that's great. And then gone, how does it dance to this? And gone, okay, let's get rid of that. So, but yeah, just a lot of playing about. So yeah, it's been good. It's been a good week. I'm excited now. We're only, when this episode releases, we're only a week away. And yeah, we'll see this time next week. Hopefully, we might be able to get some packs. I wonder if we can edit in, get some in the episode for everyone. So that
would be cool.
But yeah,
it feels like we've been talking about this for so long. I think because rotation was announced quite early, and so there was more talk about Fabled than there would have been a normal release, because we were talking about rotation. What does that mean? How's that going to play out? And we didn't know. We just knew there was going to be rotation. We didn't know how the reprints and all. So it just feels like
it
this. We've
almost
been
affected
waiting
two
so
sets,
long.
didn't it?
Yeah,
because it was like we knew before Jafar, so everything that got released in Jafar, we were like, that's okay, but it'd be better next set. Oh, this is okay, but it'd be better next set. Or this is rubbish, but next set would be really good, So there was loads of things where we were already comparing it to Fable before we even knew anything. So, but we knew some things were being rotated out. So it was like, well, this is a really good card. This works really well with this, but oh, well, that's probably gone. So, I think that's why it feels like it's taken forever. But at least it's 9 weeks till the one after, which is going to be a bit strange. So we know
we
the dates for
wait
set
so
champs
long
already.
for it. Yeah, we'll wait so long for it. We'll get it. We'll just get into it, and it'll be like, oh, next.
Yeah, next set. So I think the set champs is October, isn't it? So
yeah,
we haven't got long for that. We've only got a month, and then straight into that. So, but yeah, we'll see. We'll theory craft some good deck lists for set champs. I'm sure. I've got Cardiff before then anyway. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So how is your? I've got to ask because people want to know how is your. You haven't mentioned your red green deck. Has that? Has that gone away completely,
No,
or is it still
we've
something
still
you're
got it.
working on?
We've got the update, so I'll bring you the update with it later in the
Awesome.
episode. We'll go through that. It's progressing. It is nice. I want to play it Friday, but unfortunately, it has got some new cards in, so I can't. But if I can pull the cards, I will definitely be running that as soon as possible. So. Yeah, I think it's definitely got legs on it. It can do some work, I think. The only thing I find with the green-red deck is where you've got a lot of the new cards coming in, and I think Powerline itself is probably going to cause quite a lot of issues, and probably quite a few judge questions. So, talking about judge questions, let's introduce our guest for today's episode. Judge Imogen.
Hi there.
Hi, Imogen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. A little bit jet lagged, but getting through it.
Where were you jet lagged from? Is it a long trip?
Yeah, just come back from California for a Pokemon event, but I'm going to ignore that mouse now and focus on some Disney.
No, but that's cool. So you travel quite regularly around the world with your judging?
Yes, yeah. I'm lucky enough to get to visit lots of different places, and it's a big perk of being heavily involved in TCG judging.
Nice. So we were going to ask what were your background in judging was, because obviously you said you do Pokemon. Is there any other TCGs and stuff you do? Or?
Yeah, so I started playing TCGs about 15 years ago. I started off with Magic, and then more recently, so about sort of 6 or 7 years ago, I started getting involved in Pokemon. And then when I heard about Lorcana, when I heard there was going to be a Disney game, and then when we started seeing some of the cards and the rules looked similar to Magic, but the sort of audience seemed similar to Pokemon, I thought, this is amazing. It's slap bang in the middle. This is going to be the perfect game for me. So I was very excited.
Yeah, I never really thought of it like that. That's actually, it's quite interesting to think of it as it is that middle ground between the two. So, yeah. What made you decide to be a judge?
Well, when I was first playing Magic, I was living up in Lancaster at the time, and I sort of was first playing Magic at a cafe because the local game store near me had shut down, and so everyone would go and play in the cafe on a Friday evening. But the cafe staff didn't really know anything about games or running like local tournaments and things like that. And so I started helping them out a little bit. And then because I was helping with the tournament software and with making sure people knew what their pairings were and things like that, I sort of naturally became the person that people would ask questions to. So if they weren't sure how something worked or if there was some sort of dispute, then they'd come to me because I was already sort of helping out. And then from there, I went and did a couple of events in Manchester because they were reasonably close by, and one thing sort of led to the other, and I, got into magic judging much more, and then it became. I mean, eventually, it's now my full-time job, but that's
Oh,
very
nice.
unusual for most people. It's a hobby, it's a side thing. But yeah, I had some good opportunities at some good times in my life, and now it makes up a big part of what I do.
No, it sounds really cool.
Yeah, that's a really cool journey that you've been on. That that it wasn't something necessarily that you intentionally went out to do, but it came out of something that you enjoyed doing and has become a full-time job for you. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people start not really because they intend to, but because they are that person already. I often find myself saying it to people, what makes a judge is someone who is judging, and someone who is already supporting their community and helping out at events is arguably already a judge.
Nice. So obviously we've been doing it for a long period of time. You obviously enjoy doing it. So what would you say you enjoy most about judging?
I think the biggest thing for me will always be helping people to do the thing that they love. So
Okay,
being
yeah.
able to be surrounded by people who are having a great time and being someone who can help them have that great time. So help them to access games and help them to feel comfortable at an event. Things like that are amazing, but I would be leaving something out if I didn't mention the travel and the chance to meet so many people and so many cool communities and things like that, because that has been truly amazing.
Yeah, I never really thought of it like that because it's weird. Because as a player, it's like I'm going to the Cardiff event, I'm going to Action in Birmingham. So it's like as much as I'm only traveling around the UK, that's just as a player. So as a judge who does do multiple TCGs, you do get that opportunity to go to these different places, and it's not a job that takes you to the same place all the time.
Yeah, it's been great, and I even when I just started out and I was just sort of traveling around the north of England, that was really cool. And then I found when I was visiting my parents in the south that there were different opportunities and different events down there.
Mm.
And now I'm lucky enough to get to travel abroad and things like that. And so it's a really lovely way. Lots of people say play the game, see the world, but you can
Hmm.
also judge the game,
Yeah.
see the world as well.
Yeah, a lot less stress I would have thought as well.
I think a different kind of stress. I think some people would find judging more stressful than playing, but lots of people also find playing more stressful than judging. So I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
just a very different thing.
And you've mentioned the different communities. So you've mentioned, sort of Pokemon Magic and things. Um, is it very different when you're judging the different games in terms of the community of people that you're judging, the interaction that you have with those people?
Yeah, it can be a little bit. I'd definitely say that when I'm sort of wearing a Magic Judge shirt, it feels quite different to when I'm wearing a Pokemon Judge shirt or a
Hmm.
Lorcana Judge shirt, because the communities are different and the players are different and the rules are different, and so the kind of general ethos becomes quite different. And I'd say that one of the biggest things with Pokemon, and now with Lorcana a little bit, and hopefully more for Lorcana in the future, is the number of younger players. So you need to be able to explain rules not just to an adult who has full comprehension of what a card says and what a certain rule can mean, but also to someone much younger who may not be able to read the full version of a card, never mind have read all of them that exist. So you have to kind of meet players where they are at in terms of their experience level and also their age.
Absolutely, yeah. And from two uninkable dads who play Lorcana with kids, they also have about a 30-second attention span that you've got to get that
Yes,
information
yeah.
into them in.
It has to
Yeah,
be said,
definitely.
one of the first things I learnt judging Pokemon and that I've been able to translate to Lorcana is the moment you get to a table, you have to ask kids not to touch any cards or move any cards because some of them will just keep playing or just carry on without even really thinking about it while you're trying to ask them questions.
Yeah, I can imagine there's some challenges there. But like you say, the last thing you want is it's almost a bit like a crime scene, isn't it? You turn up, and it's like you need to know exactly what's gone on over the last few
Yeah,
turns, and it's like, look at this card, and I move this, and I played this, and yeah, I can imagine that gets a bit all over the place. So it
definitely.
obviously judging multiple TCGs and stuff. Have you ever seen anything that's you'd say is probably like the weirdest or the funniest thing you've tried to see someone do in a match? Has there been any like
Oh,
standouts that you've gone, oh my god, I've got to tell the other judges about this?
Oh, there's been all sorts of funny things over the years. There was one story that gets passed around and around, which was when a judge was called over to a table by a spectator because they thought that the players were discussing something they shouldn't be discussing. There was possibly a case of bribery, so a player offering a player
Hmm.
something else for their match result, or asking them to concede in exchange for something.
Yeah,
But when the judge came over to the table, they saw that a player was passing a note. So the player had written something on a piece of paper and was sliding it across the table. And the opponent, without looking at this note, just picked it up off the table, immediately put it in their mouth and swallowed it, which has to be the biggest way to show that you're guilty that I have ever seen,
yeah, yeah,
because at that point there's no recovering the evidence, but you have to just presume that whatever was on that paper was something that neither player wanted the judge to see.
yeah. I'll just slide my bank details across to you. It's like I'll just eat that quickly before anyone sees it. Yeah,
But
that's
if
a good one.
the funny thing is, if the opponent hadn't touched that piece of paper, they probably would have been fine because
Yeah,
the person who wrote on it was the one who was possibly suggesting something they shouldn't, but they incriminated themselves by being so keen to hide it.
uh, yeah. That's an interesting one. That one.
Absolutely. And I understand, Imogen, you judged Lorcana Worlds.
I
I mean,
did, yes, as a very very fun experience.
awesome. So you tell us a bit about maybe how that came about and what that experience was like?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I come from Magic and Pokemon, so I sort of was in a really good place to kind of help get Lorcana off the ground. And I already had a lot of experience judging really big events and judging high level events. So when the DLC season first started in Europe, the organizer, Fanfinity, they're people that I have worked with before, both with Pokemon and with Magic. And they selected me to head judge the very first DLC in Lille at the very beginning of the season.
Nice.
I was quite nervous going into it because had head judged sort of 500 to 1,000-ish player events before, but never something as big as Lille was going to be. When the judge solicitation first went out, it was only a 512 player event. So I put myself down as willing to head judge because I thought, oh, yep, 512 players, I can do that. Then the cap went up to 2,048 players, and it was quite a bit scarier. But it went well in the end, and Ravensburger were happy, and Fanfinity were happy, and so they had me do it again in Bologna a few DLCs later, and then also at the Continental Championships, the European Championships in Disneyland Paris. I was co-head judges um, for that event, and then I was asked to be a co-head judge again for Worlds. And the reason there were two of us was so that there could be one head judge on the floor the whole time, so watching the
Hmm.
majority of matches, and then one head judge always watching the stream, so that if
Oh,
anything
okay.
went wrong on stream, there was somebody with a sort of high level of rules knowledge and expertise there to get that sorted out as soon as possible.
Oh, nice, nice. So you were literally there then from the start to the end. You did the very first DLC, and then you did Worlds right at the end. So
Yeah, I did. It was a really amazing journey. And one of the best things about that has been helping other judges through that journey. And some of the judges at Worlds were brand new to Lorcana. So
mm,
their first events were either in Lille in Europe or in Atlanta in the US. And they were brand new to TCGs and things, and being able to help those people learn to become judges and kind of learn what it means to be a judge and how best they can help players was really lovely.
yeah, no. So with the obviously with like Worlds, as you said, you've got like quite an extensive knowledge of the rules and stuff. But how do you actually keep up with it all? How do you like? Is there a refresher course that you put yourself through? Or, I know there's not an official judge program as such, but is there like like you just sit down on a Friday night and just read the rule book again, or is it sort of
So I'm one of those people who struggles to learn from books. So
right?
I
Okay.
can read the rules over and over again, and some of it goes in, but definitely not all of it. I'm very much a learn by doing person.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing for me is going to events, being there, playing myself. So I play locally in Northampton as much as I can, and helping with rules questions there and talking to my local players about cards and about card interactions. That's what really helps me. And then there's also an amazing Discord that I will shout out called the Lorcana Rulebook Hub, which is for judges, but also people who are just interested in the rules and interested in judging. And that Discord helps me a lot because there we do weekly rules quizzes and people are always asking about interactions, and we talk a lot about not only what the answer to rules questions are, but also why. And I think that why the rules work the way they do is what really helps me, because
Yeah,
things making sense is a kind of
yeah,
a big
definitely.
part of
Mm.
why cards are worded the way they are, or work the way they do.
Yeah, I'm part of the Discord myself. I always you could sit there and just read like what people are talking about for hours and hours. You know, it's like you always come away. If I spend half hour of my lunch break searching through that Discord, you can guarantee I've learned something that day.
Mm.
It's I like to think I've got a relatively good knowledge, and then I sit down and start reading something on there. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I didn't see that, or I didn't think of that. So
Oh,
yeah,
for
no, it's a really good
sure.
one. I'll definitely leave a link in the description for everyone for that Discord there. So
And we have a WhatsApp group chat for our
mm,
locals, and Michael a few times has put down that group chat little those sort of rules quizzes or board states with what can you do here and sort of what can't you do, and those I've they're similar self-imaging. I don't really want to sit there and read 30 pages of rules, but those little quizzes have been a brilliant way for me to sort of learn more, and because I get them wrong every time, so every day's a school day for me.
Best way to learn is to get it wrong the first time.
and there you go. So you probably learn more than I
Yeah.
do, England. So obviously, judges are a massive part of tournaments, but how like when should people use a judge in a tournament? Is it something that only when they have a serious problem, or is it just with anything they don't feel comfortable with?
The biggest thing I always say is that you can call a judge at any time for any reason. I know that for a lot of people, it's quite a scary thing to do,
Hmm.
especially when you're in a massive room full of people. Sticking your hand in the air and shouting, or even just saying something out loud, can seem like a really intimidating thing. But judges really are there to help. That's our number one goal. And so we're there for literally anything. So even if it's just to ask to go to the bathroom, even if it's just because you're not quite sure what the wording on a card means, or even if it's, your opponent has done something and you've kind of understood what they've tried to say, but maybe they don't speak English, or maybe their English isn't very clear, and you just want some clarification. A judge can help you out with anything. We will never be annoyed at you for calling us over, unless you want to be rude to us, but that's very rare. Uh, but yeah, literally anything. If you're worried about something, if you're concerned about something, if you overhear something in the match next to you and it's distracting you, or you're not sure if something that they've done is correct, that is also fine, as long as you don't interrupt their match to do anything other than ask them to pause. So even if you're a spectator, you can call a judge, you can ask a match to pause because you just want to check something with a judge. That is absolutely fine, and we are there to help first and foremost.
Yeah, I think it's something at set champs, isn't it, that we try and remind people of the judges are there. I know set champs are a lot smaller compared to some of the bigger events, but they're still a judged event. There's still something that they're there to help, and we try and do that every set champs comes around, and we're talking about it to remind people that you're there for a reason. You're there to help out on the little things as much as a big issue if something's gone wrong. So like I say, it can be very daunting, especially I found it a little bit weird myself at the beginning with. I've got more and more used to it now, but yeah, I can see how people find it a bit weird having to stick around that. It's like going to bingo, really, isn't it? You've got to put your hand in the
Yeah,
air.
for
So
sure.
I
Or like
think
sticking
there's
your hand out for the bus. It's a bit like
yeah,
that as well.
Yeah, and I think in the Lorcana community, we've got quite a lot of players for whom it's maybe their first TCG, or they've dabbled in TCGs but they've not played competitively. So I think this is sort of new to them. So it's good to hear that you're sort of saying, well, judges are here to help and facilitate the game, and you said earlier, to help people enjoy the game. You're not simply going to come over and tell someone that they're wrong. So that's really good to hear. What would you say to someone? Something small's happened in the game. Oh, we just sort it out between ourselves quickly. We don't need to bother a judge. What would you sort of say people's mindset should be around that?
So it sort of depends. If it's a small thing, and so if your opponent says those words to you, says, "Oh, let's not bother calling a judge," then always evaluate for yourself whether they have your best interest at mind in that moment. So if it really is a small thing and it's not something that you personally feel is going to impact the game, or that you think there's any way that they could gain any sort of advantage. So, for example, if they start playing a card and then they say, "Oh, wait, no, not that one. I meant to play this card," and you think, "Oh, well, that it doesn't matter to me. Those cards are going to have the same impact on the board right now, or it doesn't change my future play." And they sort of did it all in one go, so it could have just been a mistake. Then that's absolutely fine. And I'd
mm,
encourage people to sort of use their best judgment on that. But if you're ever in a situation where you think, "Ooh, I feel like my opponent might be trying to get one by me here," or you know you care a lot about the outcome of that game and you're not sure whether they should be able to take something back, or you're not sure whether they should be able to solve what they're trying to solve in the way they're trying to solve it, then 100% call us over. And in those circumstances, just say to your opponent, it can be quite stressful in those moments, especially if someone's putting pressure on you to do something a
yeah,
certain way. But just say, "I'm going to be more comfortable if we call a judge," or "Let's just make sure we're doing it the right way. Let's call a judge." And then if you stick your hand up in the air and say "judge," then that means that they're not going to escalate anything at that point, because at that point it's sort of too late for them to try and convince you otherwise. For the most part, they're just going to accept that it's happened. So if you stick your hand up there, kind of get ahead of them on that, then you can avoid any sort of unpleasant conversations there generally.
so
The other
would
thing
you?
I'd say is that sometimes there are opportunities where you might want to call a judge, but you might be a little bit worried about how your opponent might react. And there are
Mhm,
quite a few good things that you can say under those circumstances. So the first thing to know is that you can always speak to a judge away from the table. So you
yeah,
don't have to have that conversation in front of your opponent. So this is something that's not necessarily intuitive to people. It's not obvious that that's an option. Some people will even try and claim that it's not an option, but 100% it is. You can
mm,
always speak to a judge away from the table. So this means that you have the opportunity to bring up something that you might not want to bring up in front of your opponent, maybe something you're worried about, maybe something to do with their behavior that's upset you a bit, or a concern that you have about the way that they are playing. And when you tell your opponent you're going to call a judge, if you're doing that, you can say, "Oh, I just want to ask a question about a card in my hand." There are lots of things that you could want
Yeah,
to ask
yeah.
away from the table that are nothing about your opponent. So if you're at all worried that they might react badly, there are things that you can say, things that you can do to sort of protect yourself a little bit in those scenarios.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether it's just I've had a bit of luck or what, but I'd like to say in the community I played in, I don't think I've really come across anyone that's been like in that situation, or whether been around me, like next to me or whatever, that I've ever heard anyone really complain too much about their opponent calling the judge. It's like you're there, like you say, you guys know the rules best. You're the ones that are going to be able to answer a question. So when you call the judge, if anything, it's just going to benefit you, or it might
Yeah.
not benefit you, but it will definitely benefit the game. The game will resolve in the way it should do compared to not. But going from obviously where you've got a situation where you've got either people not really bothered about calling the judge and sorting things out themselves, have you ever had a situation where you've had two players who have 100% convinced they're right? Like, no, no, I'm right on this. And the other one's, no, I'm right. And then you've had to try and battle it out on who actually is. I think.
Oh yeah, 100%. It does happen quite often, and often it will be that a player has either had a question answered by someone they trust locally,
Hmm.
but incorrectly. And so they're like, but my friend said it works this way. I trust my friend implicitly. So, of course, I'm going to believe what they said. And so sometimes that is or isn't the right thing. And sometimes as well, the rules change. Occasionally
Yeah.
we have updates to the rules, or we have a new card that gets added that looks like it works the same way as a pre existing card, but it doesn't actually. And so that can slip people up, but they can still be convinced that they've got it right. And those situations, it's kind of more obvious that a judge is needed. But yes, we will come over and do our best to de-escalate the situation, but also make sure that people know what the right answer is and why. We'll always try and make sure that players come away feeling like they understand it better.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've obviously we've got set nine and rotation coming in. Is that going to make things a lot more difficult for you guys in the sense of you've got to remember now which cards people can and can't play with, because there's going to be a load of cards now that are going to have in the bottom corner for say like set 1 to 4, which you're allowed to use because they've been rotated in, but other people might be using the exact same card with number 9 on it. So it's like, how are you guys going to know what has and hasn't been rotated in unless you're going to walk around with like a sheet of paper with all.
Yeah, 100%. It will be, I think, for kind of during Fabled and before Wells gets released, it will be a bit confusing. And it was
Mm,
something that the judge community sort of started talking about when all of the Fabled previews started coming out and we saw just how many cards were getting reprinted.
yeah.
People were starting to worry, oh, how are we going to work this out? And some of that is just practice. I wouldn't be surprised if for the first few events, people doing deck checks have it up on their phones, or they have kind of
Mm,
the set list from Fabled in front of them, just so that they have like a quick reference thing to double check against. But then I think with time it'll become a little
yeah.
bit more obvious.
Yeah, because it was one of those ones I was like toying with the idea of having to print something like that just for locals, because you're going to have a local player, especially in the smaller communities, that may potentially not quite realise what's happened and turn up with cards that aren't technically legal for play and start playing the game, and you're like, well, you can't actually play that. And then it's like, look, here's a sheet, take this home. This is what you can now use and what you can't, sort of thing. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to begin with, especially like first month or so until people get used to it. But yeah, it's have you had to judge through games that have had rotation before?
So yes, both Magic and Pokemon use rotation. So Pokemon has a rotation every year, the same way that Lorcana is going to. So every year, 4 sets go out, and at least 4 sets. It's kind of 4 main sets and then a few extra bits. Um, Pokemon is helped a little bit by the fact that cards tell you which sort of rotation year they are in. So they all
Okay.
have a letter at the bottom. However, just like in Lorcana, the older versions of those cards are still legal for play. So you can have a card that was printed 10 years ago that you can still play with. And so those make it a little bit trickier. But once again, judges will just use apps and websites and other resources available to them to double check. The same is true of Magic. Magic also rotates every year. Magic's also gone through a lot of different iterations of how rotation works. So they skipped a rotation one year. They were rotating, so the sets were in for a year for only 1 year. Then they were saying that they were in for 2 years. Then they were saying they were in for 3 years. So
Keep it nice and
they've
easy
moved
then,
it all around, really kept both players and judges on their toes. But there are a lot of different tools that you can use to help out. One of the things that I think is going to be really useful for Lorcana in particular is the official app. So
Yeah.
on the official app, when you search your collection, you can write down at the bottom of the search options, it has a little legality option. So you
Yeah.
can choose Infinity or Core on there. So if you select Core, it only shows the cards that are currently legal in a Core deck. And so that's going to be really helpful both for deck checks and for players building decks as well, or for
Yeah.
showing newer
Yeah.
players what they can and can't use.
Imogen, what would you say is the most misunderstood Lorcana rule that you've had to explain to people?
Oh, I think a really tricky one, especially when the card Diablo first came out. So around the
Yeah.
release of Set 4 and at the challenge in Bochum and things like that, we had Diablo who cares about when your opponent draws a card and triggers every time your opponent draws a card. And then we also had Let the Storm Rage On, which is an action that deals 2 damage to something and then you draw a card. And that was definitely something that we must have had hundreds of judge calls at that event about that specific interaction because loads of people were playing the Emerald Steel decks with Diablo and all of the discard. And that card works the way it works. So it deals 2 damage, you draw a card, and then the Diablo is banished after you've fully resolved the Let the Storm Rage On, which means the Diablo is still there to see your opponent draw the card from their Let the Storm Rage On. Now that's quite unintuitive because you think, oh, it's dealt 2 damage, that means that Diablo is out of there, but it doesn't because of the way
Yeah.
that the game rules work. So the game uses a thing called game state checks. That's essentially the game double checking itself that it's still working, that everything that's happening at the moment is correct. And that is how we work out whether a character that has been damaged is going to be banished or not, is during those game state checks. And game state checks never happen in the middle of a card. So with Let the Storm Rage On, it's going to deal damage, then you're going to draw a card, and only once it has finished resolving do we then do our game state checks. The game then sees, oh, Diablo's got 2 damage on, Diablo's only got 2 willpower, so they're going to be banished. But because that card has already been drawn and Diablo was there to see it be drawn, the Diablo player is going to get to draw a card. And so that I think is one of the things that's toughest in Lorcana is understanding those game state checks and understanding that nothing happens in the middle of an action or in the middle of an ability. So that's quite a handy thing for players to learn and hold on to, and makes a lot of the other rules make sense. Is if you remember that nothing happens in the middle, doesn't matter if there's a full stop, doesn't matter if it's on a new line, if it's all on one card or all part of one ability, it happens in its entirety before anything else does.
Yeah, I think that was one of the ones that obviously I was quite lucky. I'd managed to get drummed in quite early. It's like you have to complete the card first before you move on, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I had a couple of judge calls about it was Diablo and Clarabelle when that started, and the whole thing of end of turn and when's end of turn, when start of turn, and yeah,
Yeah.
that was always a fun one.
Yeah, so those again are another thing where it's like a timing situation. So learning that at the start of your turn and at the end of your turn is kind of like a one-off timing that can only happen once. It can
Yeah,
only be the start of your turn in one instance. And so anything else that resolves as a result of that won't cause anything else to trigger at the start of your turn because it's sort of capturing a moment in time like a snapshot.
Things would you? Well, what things could people do, or should people do, to get the most out of judges at their event? And are there things people can do to avoid unnecessary judge calls? I guess things that you maybe often have to come and sort out that could just be avoided. Are there any of those things,
Hmm.
tips you can give to people?
Well, I'd say the biggest thing in terms of getting the most out of judges is remembering that you can use them for more than just the rules. So, like we talk about rules questions a lot in terms of judges, but they're also there for customer service. So even little things like if you're doing a set champs maybe at a store that you've not been to before, then they're going to know where the bathroom is if it's their local store, or they're going to know where nearby might be a good place to get lunch, or whether that store allows you to bring in outside food or not, or whether there are good places nearby to get food if you're trying to nip out between games and things like that. So do use them for things other than just the rules. Also, if you've got any questions about what the event is going to look like, how many rounds it's going to be,
hmm
if you've forgotten what was said at the beginning of the event, if if there's some kind of a delay, if you're at a bigger tournament and you're not quite sure what's going on, then the judges should know, or the judges should know who can find out for you and be able to go and find that information for you. So definitely make use of them beyond just the rules. In
yeah,
terms of avoiding unnecessary judge calls, the number one thing is clear communication. Tell your opponent
hmm
what you're doing, and if at any point you're not quite sure what they're doing or what order they're doing things in, then ask them to clarify. Be like, oh, hold up a moment, slow down a little bit. What are you playing that on again? And what are you doing with that card? Because sometimes people, especially if they're doing something that their deck does a lot, they'll start playing really quickly. But if you're maybe less familiar with that deck, or they're doing some kind of combo that you've not seen before, it's very, very reasonable to ask them to slow down a bit. And that can help them not to go too far so that you'd have to ask a judge to kind of recover things or rewind things because something's gone wrong. So yeah, biggest thing, say what you're doing, say what you're doing and the order you're doing it in, and then everybody knows what's going on.
yeah. Unfortunately, I'm terrible for that. I did get told off by one of our local players for that one. I was playing red blue, and I was playing way too quick. I was using Tyler and how far and develop, and I was just
Yeah,
placing the cards
legally
down and
done.
doing it. And he was just like, "What are you doing?" I was just like, "Oh, okay, hang on a minute, and slow down a minute." All right, yeah, I can see that one 100%. Like I say, I'm guilty of that one myself. So, but would you say that you necessarily have to be like a good player to be a judge, or can if I'm going to say you're someone really enjoys TCGs, but you find that you don't enjoy playing it as much, but you like the judge side, do you have to be a good player to be a judge?
Uh, Definitely not. I'd say it can help, and like
hmm
playing a lot definitely helps. And I think there is an advantage to having that sort of competitive player experience. However, it's definitely not necessary. Like, I know some people who judge who essentially never play because they just enjoy judging so much more than they enjoy playing. And so
Yeah,
they judge at every set champs they possibly can. So they rarely get to play in any. Whereas I generally speaking don't judge set champs in particular because I like to play in them. So I like to, you know, be with my local community. I like to try and get a promo from every set. And for me, that's my opportunity to really remind myself of the player experience and how a player feels, what it feels like to call a judge, what it feels like when your opponent might be doing something that you've sort of lost track of, things like that. And that, I think, helps me relate to players on the floor when I'm at a larger event.
No, sounds good. Have
And
you
what's
actually had a judge called on yourself?
I have, yeah. Not recently, but I definitely have many times. I have the problem locally that a lot of my players who know me, they won't call a judge because they'll just ask me. And like, there's 100% times where I'm like, no, 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 don't ask me that. I shouldn't know that that's in your hand, or like, you shouldn't
Can I
take
do
my
this?
word
Or,
for it
yeah.
because I have a vested interest in how this goes. But I completely understand why they do it, and I appreciate that they have that trust in me. And that sort of trust in my knowledge. But no, I've definitely had judges called on me. I've had penalties in the past. I've had game losses in the past. Not so much in Lorcana because it's actually quite hard to get a game loss in Lorcana, because the rules are sort of written to try and protect people from that, because it's a very big penalty for often what are usually mistakes.
Yeah.
But something I hold on to the fact that both of the game losses that I have received in Magic are things where the rules have been rewritten over the years,
Right.
and both of the things I've received game losses for are no longer game losses. So they're both things that are dealt with in a different way now. So that always brings me some solace for the fact that I got those game losses in the past. Yeah, one of
and
the yeah. Oh, I
sorry,
just
go.
something I'll add to that. One of the big things is that if your opponent does call a judge and they've not told you why, it might just be because you've gone a little bit fast, and it might just be because you've made a mistake. We're all human, we all make
Yeah.
mistakes. Sometimes you might play a thing and have not quite understood how it works, or you might have played
Mm.
something that sort of doesn't quite work in the rules. Doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't mean you've done something wrong with a capital W. It might just be an honest mistake. And for the most part, a judge should recognize that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I
it's
think we
definitely
had
easy to
that.
make.
I remember at our locals sometime back when Tiana first came out, the 3-drop that makes you pay a tax for challenging.
Mm.
And I think we had somebody that played yellow quite a lot and was playing it, and we were playing it to our own version of the rules that we thought were the rules, and then somebody was actually watching us and went, "That isn't the way the card works, guys." We're like, "Oh, okay,
Easily
right, yeah."
done.
So, with obviously, you were saying that you don't necessarily have to be a good player to be a judge, but would you say there's any sort of skills or experience or anything that really come in handy if you wanted to be a judge?
I'd say the biggest things that pay off are customer service. If you're used to any sort of customer service interactions, be it in a retail job, often people who work in schools make excellent judges. Anyone who works in a field where they have to explain things to other
Hmm.
people, especially if you're explaining things to people with different levels of understanding, different levels of ability, all of those are really key skills when it comes to judging, and so often they sort of pay off really well. But also just anyone who is interested in the rules, but more importantly, interested in helping other people. I'd say that the majority of judges do it for a love of the game and for wanting to support a local community or support a broader community. And those are often the people who stick with it the longest because they have the motivation to carry on supporting a thing that they love and that they want to be part of.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. So we've actually, obviously, we don't want to take up too much time of your evening, but we've got a few of what I'm going to call not silly questions, but slightly less rule-based questions. So, obviously, I think other TCGs do, but as far as I'm aware, Lorcana doesn't. So, if you could make a judge special promo card for Lorcana, what would it be? What card would you go for?
Oh, I think I'm going to have to pick one of the favorite cards of a friend of mine. So there's a judge in the US who I've worked with very closely, who likes to wear a black and white striped shirt sometimes when he's judging events.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have to get Pete Games referee as a judge promo because after all, we are games referees. And so I think that one would be a really lovely one to be a nod to my friend, but also the wider judge community.
Yeah, I think that's literally the perfect card, really, isn't it? It's, it says it on the card and everything. So
Yeah.
And if you could ban one card purely because it creates the most judge headaches, which card would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. Not something I've really thought about before. Um, it might be, well, it's funny because often the cards that we get asked about the most online are not the same as the cards that people are actually playing in their decks. So I think that the card that irritates judges the most online is probably Mirabelle Madrigal, the one that requires you to have 5 other characters in play. People are always trying to sneak that card in. They're always trying to find a fun way that you can put that onto the board without having 5 other characters. There
yeah,
essentially isn't a way to do that, but people are desperate to find one. So we get asked about that all the time. But then the other one, the one that is actually creates a lot of really complex rules interactions, would probably be Return of Hercules. So that's the
okay, yeah,
action that brings something back, both, or well, allows you to put something into play, both for you and your opponent. Essentially, any cards that allows your opponent to play cards on your turn can get really complicated. So if you use Return of Hercules and your opponent puts into play a Mufasa or puts into play a Prince Naveen and things like that, you can then get really funky things that happen with them being able to play characters or play actions on your turn, which the rules don't really expect to happen, and therefore they become more complex whenever that does happen.
yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Uh, so the have you ever had a moment where you're like, and you kind of covered it a little bit earlier, but have you ever had a sort of like, I can't believe this happened moment? Like either someone's done something completely crazy, or like, have you ever had to watch a game where you thought, oh well, this person's obviously won, and then something crazy happened and it went the other way, or
Um, There have been times where I've watched somebody sort of top deck the exact card that they needed, sort of 3 turns in a row, and things like that. Like there's been situations, and this is particularly relevant when you're judging a match on stream at the big events,
yeah,
because the judges for all of those matches that you see on stream are sat just behind the players, or often just in front of the players. If you see the
yeah,
players looking towards the camera every now and then, it's often because they're looking towards the judges, because judges can speak to them in the headsets that they're wearing, because the judges have their own headsets, so they can hear everything the player is saying. And sometimes you're watching those matches and you have a camera that shows you everything that's in the player's hands and a camera that shows you the sort of top down view. And so you can see things as they're drawing them. And I've definitely had situations where I think a game is all sewn up, one player is definitely going to win. I'm sort of starting to pack my bag up almost, like thinking that I'm done for the day. And then the other player has just come out of nowhere. They've top decked the perfect thing after the perfect thing. And
yeah,
all of a sudden, the game's completely different. And suddenly they're in the winning position, or they've just won out of nowhere. And so those make for really exciting stream games in particular.
yeah. It's always good when you've got something to watch. We always like to root for the underdog, and then the underdog manages to top deck the perfect answer. Everyone always goes
Yeah.
crazy. So
But when you've been judging, Imogen, have you ever been tempted to rule a game based on who has the cooler playmat?
Oh, excellent question. Excellent question. I'll be honest, like there are times where I will look at somebody's outfit for an event, look at somebody if they've got, matching sleeves, matching deck box, they've got a really cool playmat, maybe one that they have drawn themselves sometimes or something that's really cool. And I can definitely appreciate the effort that they have gone to, but that will never impact my ruling on the game. But
Damn it, I was about
100%
to
I
get
will.
all matching set then.
Yeah, I thought my genie sleeves were going to do it for me because they look so cool. I thought they were going to sway my judge decision.
I have definitely after a match gone up to players to say, oh, by the way, I really like your sleeves, or I really like your outfit, or you've got a really cool hat. But I always keep that separate from the match because it's not worth me doing anything differently, because I'd lose my reputation and kind of the reputation that I have and the trust people have in me. So I always have to keep those two separate. But no, there are definitely times that I want to let people know, especially if they have a cool cosplay or something like that. Because we always want to encourage that at an event as well. We just have to keep it separate from our game rulings.
Yeah, exactly. So then, moving on to the final question we have. This was a question when we very first had a guest on the podcast that one of our locals decided to ask as a silly question, and we've done it every guest since. So, if you were a soup, what soup would you be?
Well, not a question that I expected to be asked on a Lorcana podcast. That
That's
is
it.
for
Throws everyone.
sure.
Everyone expects the Disney question. What's your favourite movie? No, we want to know what soup you are.
Well, I'm now trying to think back to if I have had soup at Disneyland or Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
because I've had the luck to go to both this year. So I'm suddenly trying to think if there's a Disney soup that fits. But I don't think I had soup any time I was there. Although I think a friend of mine had a tomato soup with a grilled cheese at one point from one of the kids' meals. But
Nice.
I think I think I would have to go with a minestrone soup, because a minestrone soup has got a little bit of everything in it. And I really like variety, which you can probably tell by the fact that I do 3 different games. And I love travel and trying new things. So yeah, I'd go for the soup for the indecisive with some minestrone so I can have a little bit of everything.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, we managed to even ask the Lorcana World Champion himself the soup question. We didn't
Oh,
manage to get him
nice.
on as a guest, but I did manage to reach out to him on Discord. So we got that one. So we'll add you to the soup list.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I think that's all we have for you in question time. Obviously, we don't want to steal up your entire evening. So, but thank you very, very much for coming on, and I hope it's really helped people, understand that, judges are there, yes, as a rules, but they're not just there for that, that they are someone to help and support in the whole game and the whole community itself. So, like I said, we'll leave a link to the law book Discord, because, like I say, I find that fascinating in there. I'm always learning something in there, so hopefully that can help people out as well. But yeah, it's been really good to have you on. So thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And if there are people listening who ever have any other questions about judging or are interested in becoming a judge and aren't sure when to start, then and you happen to see me at an event, I'm often at events in the UK. So if you see me around, then feel free to come up and ask me questions. I never mind. It's literally my job. So always happy to be asked questions.
Perfect.
Thank you. And what's your next big event that you've got coming up, Imogen?
My next big event is the very first CCQ, so the very first Challenge Championship qualifier event that is happening in Cardiff at the end of September. So I'll be there at Firestorm Games. So I'm head judging that one with a great team of judges from across the UK. So if people want to come and say hi at that one, then I will be more than welcome to help them out with anything they need.
Oh, perfect. I'll come say hello because I'll be there myself. So I'll pop over.
Super.
So yeah, no, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll leave you to your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on then, talking about judge questions. let's have a look at the deck that I think is going to cause quite a few of them. And covering from last week, back to the red-green. So this is grown a bit since last week. This is narrowed down a little bit. I think it's a bit more tidy, a bit more of a clear game plan. And it seems to be performing quite well. It's got an answer to most things. The latest addition is the Mother Gothel. I've been running it without it, and someone mentioned on Discord about it. It feels a little bit weird playing Mother Gothel, especially the free cost, because they're always going to put the weakest card back to their hand. It's like, I can say I had a Shark down and a Clarabelle, 1-drop Clarabelle. You're always going to put a Clarabelle at your hand. Well, that's fine, because I've got Beaking. So the idea is that you play that and they're going to take the worst card off the board. So then you're then potentially playing Beaking and wiping out the big list. So you've got that thing of they're always going to... It's like anything. If you give someone a choice to bounce something, the chances are they're going to take the least packful card off the board and leave the more packful card on it. So therefore, when you're then singing Beaking, you're actually removing the more powerful card. So that was the idea of putting the Mother Gothel in. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work just yet, but the options of getting things off the board is always good.
All right. So you're playing Mother Gothel on like turn 5 in that instance.
Yeah.
So you've already got a turn 4. Already got turn 4 up that can sing your Beaking.
Yeah.
You're playing Mother Gothel, removing 1 with that, and then using the Beaking to remove the other.
Yeah, because obviously you can sing Beaking on turn 2 technically if you wanted to. With turn 3 because he's a singer. So obviously on turn 3 you can sing it. Obviously that relies on them only having one thing on board, or if they've got 2 daisies, for instance, you're not going to be too bothered which daisy they take out. But yeah, I haven't really fully tested that yet, but that's the new addition into what I've been looking at. But being able to shift power line on turn 4 and sing Under the Sea has been such a saviour against aggro. It makes a big difference. That's one thing that I think has helped, but not many people seem to be running aggro at the minute, so it's not too much of an issue. I think it's where everyone's in that testing phase. No one's actually running the deck that everyone's teching for. So it's a bit weird. Everyone's teching for this aggro deck and no one's actually playing it because everyone's trying to find the answer to it.
But it's also one of those decks that even if you are intending to play it, you kind of know what it does, right? There's not a lot of... I don't think there's a great deal of testing with that deck.
But still, it's just is what it is. So yeah, it's been doing quite well. The Luis or whatever he's called, he's been doing really well. Just against the evasives, just like they play Genie, you play Lewis, they're going to have to trade, which is quite nice. One addition which I was tempted to put in, which I haven't done as of yet, is the Rapunzel High Climber, the one that when you quest, they can't quest, just to stop some of that early lore gain. And also, I've come across decks that have been using the Robin Hood Sharpshooter, the 4 cost. And if you play that Rapunzel and choose Robin, they can't quest with it, so therefore they don't get to trigger it. So it just sits on board doing nothing. I actually stalled someone out about stopping them from questing with it about 5-6 times in a row. And from there, you start to build the board and win the game because they're not doing what their deck does. But I don't know what to cut to fit it in. So at the minute, I've left it as it is. But yeah, seems to be doing okay. So that's one that needs a bit more testing. I want to take it to locals, but until I narrow down on exactly where, it won't get anywhere just yet. So the other one I've come up with, which I think you're going to like, I'm hoping you don't steal too much information from this because I don't really want to face against it. I've built a whole new location.
Yeah, so, I so want to play Purple Steel, but I don't want to buy another 4 dock because Lily's got 4 dock in her deck and she needs 4 dock in her deck. Yeah. So that's the sole reason I'm not building Purple Steel at the moment.
I was looking at it and I think pretty much the 1s and 2s in this deck are pretty much locked in. There's a meme currently going around of like ink, play hook and pass turn. That's pretty much everyone's turn 1 at the minute, you know. So, but with this, with the inclusion of John Silver, both of these are aliens, which means that they both work really well with the Lilo. John Silver obviously stops things from challenging, which is going to help things stay on the board. And when you're looking at 2 locations, this one is basically a McDuck at Quest for 2. So you're going to be gaining potentially quite a lot of lore from that, because there's not a lot of rush characters. Maui's not here anymore, so you're not having to deal with that big high hit damage anymore early game. It's still doable, but it's going to be slightly later. And obviously you got the mine as well, because you've got Doc in here to help trigger it, and just moving any of these there to ping 1 damage can make a big difference. But both of these being aliens, I found it so well. If you can get 2 locations down, this has got resist 2. So it's basically, once you've used Lilo, it's basically a 5/5. You know, so it's doing a lot of damage there. And worst case scenario, you just slap another location and quest for 4 or 5 instead. So it's been quite nice. I didn't, when I saw this get reprinted, I was a bit like, that I'd never see play. And then I remembered about Treasure Mountain, and I was like, maybe it will. So we'll see. I'm not entirely convinced on it as of yet. It does really, really well against aggro, but those longer games, it's going to start to struggle, because the card draw's a little bit sort of lacking this. You've only really got Dock and Fighters Keepers and Genie.
Yeah,
So,
well,
but yeah.
Your Captain Hook, Madam Mim is such a really nice start as well. Again, if we're concerned about aggro, you know, they drop Daisy and it's like, okay, you get 2 lore, I potentially get a card because there's a lot of characters in my deck, and I just take it out straight away.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I think at the minute, from all the testing that's going on, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't end up seeing as much aggro as we thought, because people are going to work out the counters for it. So, you know, if you do run aggro, you kind of run it at a risk. But it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, we do have a few events right at the start, so we'll know a little bit then. And then we have a little bit of news. There's not much, unfortunately, because obviously we've had all the releases and everything now. We won't go through all the releases, but we will bring you, when I can find the button I'm looking for. We've had the information out on the OP, so the organised play, with the promos. So the promos we will be receiving are these ones here, and Curse Merfolk. For some reason, there's no picture of Curse Merfolk, but it is there. So these 3, Strength, Sisu, and Curse Merfolk, are part of the Standard League rotation.
I'm so excited by that. I mean, I think, you know, kudos to Ravensburger. They've really nailed this set. You know, 3 really playable cards. You always love getting any sort of shiny cardboard, which is fantastic. So I like getting the promos, but you know, I really, really, really want a playset of Strength of a Raging Fire as a promo, Sisu as a promo, Merfolk as a promo. You know, those are things now that would encourage me to turn up and play more if I needed any encouragement. I don't play whenever I can, but no, but you genuinely would feel like, I'll be queuing up to pay my entry for the game. Looking forward to getting hold of those promos. So well done, Ravensburger.
I think the Alice is one of those cards that currently doesn't see much play. It's basically in, can't remember the name of the card now. I literally had it before I started talking. It basically puts a item into the player's inkwell.
Hideaway.
That's one. I don't see it see much play at the minute, but I would definitely run 2 Alice in my deck as a hideaway in Infinity over hideaway, because it's still inkable and it's character, so you can quest with it if you need to, and it does give -2 strength to opposing characters on quest. So it's chosen opposing, so you only get to pick 1, but it's kind of a hideaway coil Quest for Two all in one.
Okay.
So I can see him playing Infinity with Sisu and some other bits. I can definitely see that same play. Unfortunately, it won't in Constructed. I don't think it's really got home at the minute. But yeah, it's definitely got an option there. And I think the Alice is the one for the box. So when you buy a box, you get an Alice. And then the Queen is the pre-release card. Could have got them the wrong way around, but those two are either promo or pre-release. And then we have 3 pins and an ink color pin this time around. We're used to having 2 and an ink pin, but yeah, we've got 3 this time. Interesting to see Gaston, considering it didn't get reprinted. But it's still a nice pin. I'm just having a look. I thought we already had a Gaston, but we don't. No, we've got a Hades. So yeah, a bit of an interesting choice there, but I mean, I'm not going to say no. A Gaston pin will always look good.
And have we got a box? Because I'm trying to collect the set of boxes, so I'm always worried that I've missed one, but I don't think I have.
Yeah, no, we do. Unfortunately, there isn't any pictures of the box, but we do have one. I believe it was.
Is it the Is it the Emerald one? This time around?
It's. Yeah, it must be. It must be.
So we've
Goofy
got...
Set for Adventure storage box, so it'd be a Goofy.
Cool.
So yeah. And then the only other news that we've had outside of obviously card release is set champs. So obviously we know about set champs. We knew what the mat and the card and everything's going to be, but most importantly, we now have a date. So it's probably not going to be on here, which I don't think it is. It's on their website, but it starts in October. I believe it's 4th to the 25th. It's 4 weekends basically in October. They've obviously reduced it. Last set champs was 5, but obviously we've got a reduced set anyway. It's only 9 weeks. 4 of them we're playing set champs. So we've only got 5 weeks that we're not playing. One of them is the end week. So set champs finishes. You got a week break, then the new set. So that reveal season can be very, very compact because you've got set champs and reveals going on at the same time. So that could be really interesting. But yeah, obviously we know the card already. Unfortunately, there isn't a second place playmat, and they haven't announced that coming back. So yeah, no news on that one. But I mean, I don't mind it too much. I don't think there needs to be a playmat as such. Just maybe something else for a second place would be nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think there should be something for second place. Not this position I've had to worry about too much. So as long as there's stuff for top 8, that's probably about me. But yeah, it always feels a little bit that somebody's, especially we've seen some really close finals around locally, and you do kind of walk away feeling a little bit bad for the guy that's battled through all day, played in a really, really close match, and maybe it's been a top deck at the end of the day, or it's been something marginal that the guy, their opponent has won with.
A small
been a great game, and they're walking out going, well, could have just come 8th, to be honest, and the same
wouldn't
thing.
have had to play 3 games and
been home earlier, had me dinner. So yeah, I hope Ravensburger think about that in the future. As you said, I don't think it needs to be a mat, but I just think there needs to be something just in recognition of that. I mean, well, I guess that's maybe harder to do, but I did play a little bit of another TCG at one point where they had promos, but I think your first and second place had a first and second place stamp on them. So if you came in second place, you got a promo. The top 8 got promo, but you got it had the second place still on it. So I know there's lots of different things you could do, but it's just something that recognises.
Yeah, I think we said before, just potentially doing, potentially a playset for the winner, 2 cards for second, and go from there or something. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But as always, we have our flavor text game. So I think it was quite an easy one last week. We've had quite a few people reach out to us, and the magic of editing, we're going to have our flavor text reminded to us by one of our friends of the podcast. So take it away.
His heart warmed as the music began, and the dancers took their places. All right, mate, I see you. Oh!
So yeah, our flavor text for this week was obviously beast. So I think a few people did comment to us straight away on this one. It was quite an easy one. So yeah, it was a good one. So I am actually prepared for this week. I do have one ready to go. I saw this flavor text when I was looking through some cards, and I thought, do you know what? That's perfect. I need that as a flavor text. So the flavor text for this week isn't a new card. It's actually an old one. All I will give you is 2 hints. It's in steel, and it has the pen type as the flavor text. And the flavor text is, all he's got is his charm. So that's all he's got is his charm. So that is flavor text for this week. So please drop us a comment in the description below. Let us know what you think, who you think that is, and we're obviously revealing it on next week's podcast. So I think that's kind of it from this week. We've had a busy one. Massive thank you again to Imogen for coming on. A head judge. Well, I think she's the co-head judge for Worlds. So she definitely knows what she's talking about. It was quite insightful. I didn't think I'd hear her tell us the story on, players eating notes and
No,
stuff.
that was not what I was expecting.
So
really enjoyed that interview. So I have my thanks to Imogen. And really nice that I was really taken by the way she's described judging. To be honest, and I've never quite thought of it like that. I guess your judge, especially at locals event or whatever, is the person that knows the most about not just the rules, but the local store, the local area, what's going on. So really interesting to hear sort of judging described like that.
Yeah, definitely. So on next week's episode, we will bring in you another guest. So we've got back-to-back guests. So on next week's episode, we actually have a listener/viewer that's coming on. He's actually built a deck which it's not a turn one. It's not a turn one kill, but it is an OTK deck. He has worked out a way of winning on turn 4 with a deck that isn't aggro, which is really interesting. Obviously,
okay.
All things do have to align and you do have to hit the perfect draw, but it is technically possible to win on turn 4 with a non-aggro deck. So it's an interesting one. So we'll be bringing that. He's going to come on. I wouldn't do it justice trying to explain the play lines and everything. So I said, you know what? He's an uninkable dad himself. And we said, come on the podcast and you can explain it all to us. So watch out for that one. But thank you very much for everyone for tuning in this week. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
So next week's episode will be dropping as long as Michael can work his magic on release day. So as well as a special guest, we will try and bring you some special deck lists to get you off to a flying start. So yes, do remember to give us a like. Look, if you're stuck with us so far, just take a couple of seconds to drop down there. Give us a like. It really helps the channel. We massively appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, and we do know that an awful lot of people thought they were subscribed to the channel, who watch the channel, who are not, so just check that you are subscribed to the channel. Again, that helps us, but also it means that you won't miss the episodes when they drop. And
exactly.
Do let us know what you're cooking for set 9. Have you got a spicy deck? Have you spotted a combo that no one else has yet spotted? Or do you think there's a card that might be a sleeper card of the set? Do let us know. Pop it in the comments. We always want to find out what you're thinking of, and we might well be able to give it a shout out on a future podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So, as always, it is time to roll up that playmat.
Pack away the dice.
And remember, stay uninkable.
See you next time.
See you next time.